The USS Resolute emerged from the shimmering folds of hyperspace, the cold, infinite void surrounding it. Elara Vance stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the distant star system of Zorath. It was supposed to be a routine peacekeeping mission. The Federation, with its notoriously smooth public relations, had sent the usual political speech about humanitarian aid and ensuring diplomatic balance. They didn't mention the tense border skirmishes between the Zoran Empire and the Iraqi, or the rumors of a covert Federation operation in the system. Elara didn't trust the Federation's intentions, especially not now. Over the last few years, she'd seen the cracks beneath the veneer of their so-called peacekeeping efforts. They spoke of peace but acted like conquerors, their interests shrouded in half-truths. She had been a part of the program long enough to see that the greater powers often used their military might to cement their control, not for peace, but for dominance. The Resolute, her command, had become more than just a ship. It was a symbol, a warning to those who would abuse their power. "Captain, the Zora system is in range," Commander Finn Anderson, her second-in-command, said from the communications station. His voice was calm but edged with a concern that matched her own. Elara nodded. "Put me through to the Zoran delegation." "Yes, ma'am," Finn replied, and within seconds, the image of the Zoran ambassador flickered into view on the main screen. Ambassador Dalier, a tall figure with slick, silver-gray skin and piercing green eyes, bowed slightly. "Captain Vance, it's an honor." Elara returned the gesture, maintaining a neutral expression. "Ambassador, I'm here to facilitate a peaceful resolution to the ongoing border tensions. We're here to ensure there is no escalation." "Peace, Captain? A fragile thing in these times." Dalier's voice was smooth, but his words carried an edge. "The Zoran Empire has been patient, but their people are weary. The Iraqi have not honored their agreements." She didn't miss the subtle but deliberate emphasis on the word Iraqi. Elara took a slow breath, mentally aligning herself with the mission. "We are aware of the situation, Ambassador. The Federation has authorized a ceasefire agreement. My crew will ensure that both sides adhere to it." Dalier's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the tension was palpable. "I will cooperate, Captain. But beware, the Iraqi are not as peaceful as they appear. There are factions among them who want war, not peace." Elara didn't trust his words, but there was little she could do until she had more information. "Understood. We will be in orbit within the hour. Prepare for my arrival." The transmission ended, and Elara leaned back in her chair. The Resolute was one of the most advanced ships in the fleet, designed not just for war but for diplomacy and peacekeeping. But peacekeeping had become a farce. The Zoran Empire had dominated the Iraqi for decades, and the Federation's supposed neutrality had been nothing but a mask for their own interests in the region. Elara had seen it too many times before. "Captain, we're entering the Zoran-controlled orbit," Finn said, breaking her thoughts. "Zoran forces are on high alert." "Understood," she said quietly. "Prepare for a diplomatic landing. I want full readiness in case things go sideways." The bridge crew responded with quick precision, falling into their tasks with practiced ease. Elara's mind raced. She knew the Federation wasn't acting in good faith. What she didn't know was how deep their involvement ran in the conflict. A sudden pang of doubt struck her. Was she walking into another political trap? Was the Federation really trying to broker peace, or were they merely using her and her crew to manage an escalating war to maintain control of the region? The Resolute drifted toward the Zoran capital shipyard. Massive space stations loomed overhead, the Zoran fleet a show of strength in orbit. Elara's brow furrowed. The Zorans might be on edge, but the Federation had something to do with it. She could feel it. "Captain, the Zoran fleet is locking onto us," Lieutenant Zara Lee, the weapons officer, reported. "They're just watching us for now, but it doesn't feel right. Keep shields at full strength," Elara said. "Let's make it clear we're here for peace." "Yes, Captain," Zara replied, the tension evident in her tone. Elara felt a weight on her chest. She had been through many peacekeeping missions, but something about this one felt different. The Zorans might claim they wanted peace, but their eyes didn't hide the desperation. And the Iraqi? They were caught in the crossfire, yet the Federation had a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. It wasn't about peace. It was about power. As they entered the atmosphere, Elara saw the damage. The Iraqi colony on the planet's surface was nothing like the peaceful settlements she had been briefed on. The once lush fields were scorched, buildings smoldering with the remnants of a recent bombardment. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a war zone. She turned to Finn, her voice low but firm. Something's not right here. Finn nodded. Agreed. This doesn't look like a ceasefire. The Federation's been here longer than we've been told. They've been involved, actively. We need to get down there now, Elara said. I don't care what the ambassador says. Something's happening beneath the surface, and I won't stand for it. As the Resolute descended through the thick clouds of the planet, Elara's gut twisted with a growing sense of unease. She didn't believe the Federation was telling her everything. The Zorons were supposed to be her allies in this, but their actions were contradictory. If they truly sought peace, they wouldn't have launched an offensive on a civilian population. Landing on the outskirts of the Iraqi capital, the Resolute settled softly on the cracked earth. The atmosphere inside the ship was heavy with anticipation as Elara gathered her team. Finn, Zara, and Lieutenant Theo Harris, a sharpshooter and close-quarters combat specialist, were her primary allies on the ground. They moved quickly, gathering their gear and heading toward the transport. We're going to the Iraqi command center first, Elara ordered. We need to find out what really happened here. The transport descended into the city, the once pristine Iraqi structures now nothing more than skeletal remains, ruined and broken. The remnants of battle were everywhere, craters, fires, twisted metal. As the shuttle touched down, a small group of Iraqi representatives greeted them, their faces grim. Elara stepped out first, surveying the area with the practiced eye of a soldier. The Iraqi had been pushed to the brink, but she saw no signs of true rebellion. The Federation had claimed that the Iraqi were responsible for the aggression, but this wasn't the work of insurgents. This was the result of overwhelming military force. Captain Vance, one of the Iraqi leaders, a woman with short blue hair and striking yellow eyes, stepped forward. We did not start this war. Elara's gaze sharpened. Then who did? The Iraqi leader's face twisted with frustration. The Zoran Empire. They have the backing of the Federation. We have the evidence, hidden in the underground vaults. But the Federation, they are trying to silence us. Elara felt her blood run cold. What evidence? We have intercepted transmissions. The Federation has been aiding the Zorons in their assaults. We were just a pawn in their scheme. The words struck like a blow. Elara had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed left her with a sinking feeling. She had trusted the Federation too much. This was bigger than a simple peacekeeping mission. It was a full-blown political operation designed to control an entire system. We'll get you the evidence, Elara said, her voice cold. But we need to act quickly. They'll come for you, and they'll come for us next. The Iraqi leader nodded. Then let's go before they do. Elara's team moved quickly into the underground vault, navigating through the ruins of the city. Inside they found what they were looking for, an encrypted data terminal, buried deep beneath layers of rubble. It took only minutes for Theo to crack it open, revealing the dark truth. The Federation's involvement was far more extensive than they'd been led to believe. These aren't just military maneuvers, Finn said, staring at the screen. This is a coordinated effort to suppress entire populations. We've been used, Elara muttered. And now we have proof. A sudden explosion shook the ground, and the building trembled. Elara's instincts kicked in. We're not alone. Move now! Gunfire erupted, and the team sprinted back toward the shuttle. But as they emerged, the sight that greeted them was worse than they had imagined. The Zoran Empire's forces were converging on the city, backed by Federation warships. Elara knew that the fight for peace had just become a fight for survival. The ground trembled beneath Elara's boots as the Resolute lifted off from the ruins of the Iraqi capital. Through the viewports, she could see the smoke rising from the wreckage of the city below. The battle had just begun, but the Federation's hand was already clearly visible. The truth, buried in the vaults beneath the Iraqi city, was damning. The Zorons and their Federation backers had been manipulating the Iraqi conflict for years, using it as a means of controlling a vital region. The Federation had played both sides, deliberately fanning the flames of war to maintain its dominance. And now, Alara had the proof. But as she stood on the bridge of the Resolute, she knew that the hardest part was yet to come. The Federation wouldn't let this slide. They couldn't afford to. "Captain," Finn Anderson said, his voice tight with tension as he studied the tactical display. "The Zoran fleet is in orbit, and I'm detecting Federation warships moving in from the outer system. They're closing in fast." Alara turned toward the screen. The sight of the approaching fleet sent a chill through her. The Federation ships, sleek, efficient, and deadly, moved with purpose, a signal that they had already anticipated her next move. They weren't here for diplomacy. They were here to silence her. "Time to make a decision," Alara said, her voice firm. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to buy time for the Iraqi to get their people to safety. I don't care about the fleet right now, we need the intel to get out of here, alive." "Understood," Finn replied, already issuing orders to the crew. The bridge hummed with the activity of a well-drilled crew, each member focused on their task, the tension in the air thick as they prepared for what was coming. Alara's mind was sharp, but the pressure weighed heavily on her shoulders. The Zorons might have been her allies, but their motives were still unclear. And the Federation? Their mask had slipped, revealing something far darker than she had ever imagined. She walked over to the tactical console and stared at the star system's map. The Federation was closing in from all sides, and her only option was to keep moving. "Zara, keep the weapons powered down unless I say otherwise. We're not here to escalate this." "Acknowledged, Captain," Zara Lee, the weapons officer, replied, her voice cool and professional. "Get us out of here, Finn. I don't want to be in range when those ships fire." The Resolute responded with swift precision, its engines roaring as it engaged the thrusters. The ship angled itself toward a nearby asteroid field, the dense rocks offering some degree of cover from the incoming Federation ships. For now, they would be safe, but Alara knew that wouldn't last long. She had barely had time to process the enormity of what they had uncovered when her comms lit up with an urgent signal. "Captain, it's the Iraqi leader Derek," Finn said, his voice strained. "He insists on speaking to you immediately." "Put him through," Alara said, barely concealing her frustration. She didn't have time for political games. But this was different. This was the man who could confirm the Federation's complicity in the war. The screen flickered and the figure of Derek, the Iraqi leader, appeared. His face was drawn, eyes heavy with the burden of their losses. His blue skin, once radiant with hope, now seemed dulled by the weight of years spent in conflict. "Captain Vance," he said, his voice clipped. "The Federation forces are already landing on our moon. They are executing a full-scale operation to silence our people." Alara didn't flinch. "We've already uncovered the Federation's involvement. We know they've been orchestrating this war for years. We can't afford to sit here and wait for them to wipe you out." Derek's eyes darkened. "You have the proof, then? You understand what this means?" Alara met his gaze. "I do. But we can't expose it from here. The Federation's fleet is already mobilizing. I need you to keep your people moving and find shelter. We'll work on getting this intel to the wider galaxy. But first, we need to survive." Derek paused, his brow furrowing as though he were weighing the gravity of her words. "You don't understand, Captain. If they discover the evidence, it will be the end for us. They will wipe us out." Alara's stomach clenched. "We won't let that happen. We need to make contact with our fleet. Reinforcements will be here soon. Until then, stay hidden and stay alive. I'll give you that peace." The transmission ended, leaving Alara to stare at the cold, empty screen. She knew she was sending them into hiding, into the unknown, but there was no choice. The Federation's resources were too vast, too far-reaching. She couldn't protect them all at once, but she could gather the support they needed. Finn, she said, turning back to the tactical console. We need to contact the Iraqi command center and inform them of the situation. Get them to set up a secure channel for the intel. I'm on it, Finn replied, his fingers flying over the controls. As the Resolute sped through the asteroid field, Elara's thoughts turned inward. The Federation had been manipulating the entire situation, using the Zorons, using the Iraqi. She had always believed the Federation's goal was to maintain peace in the galaxy, but now she saw it for what it truly was, a power play. And the humans? She and her crew were caught in the middle of it, their mission turned from peacekeeping to survival. But there was more. The Zoran Empire was no stranger to ruthless tactics, and Elara had no illusions about their intentions. The Zorons had been manipulating the situation, too, and their true goals weren't as clear as she had once thought. Elara paced the bridge, her mind racing. The Resolute was the Federation's most advanced peacekeeper ship, but she couldn't rely on just firepower alone. The stakes had shifted. This wasn't just about maintaining peace. It was about confronting a corrupt system that had been pulling the strings for far too long. We're in position, Finn said, breaking into her thoughts. The Iraqi secure channel is open. They've confirmed that they have the evidence stored in a hidden vault. The Federation's coming for it. Elara stood still, processing the gravity of their situation. The Federation would stop at nothing to destroy the evidence, to silence the truth. If the Iraqi got the data out, it could bring the whole galaxy to the brink of revolution. Prepare a shuttle, she said, her voice colder now. We need to go to that vault. We don't have much time before they find it. Zara and Theo stepped forward, already geared up for the mission. Elara could see the resolve in their eyes, the quiet determination to see this through. We're with you, Captain, Zara said. We'll protect the intel, no matter the cost. Elara nodded, appreciating the loyalty in her crew. But she knew that this mission would test them all. The Federation wasn't going to let them succeed. And the Zorons? They had no reason to trust the humans anymore, not after everything that had happened. They'd be walking into a hostile environment, one that could very well turn into a deadly confrontation. The shuttle bay doors opened, and the crew made their way to the waiting transport. As Elara descended the ramp, she glanced at the rest of her team, her heart heavy with the weight of the coming mission. The fate of the Iraqi people, and possibly the galaxy, hung in the balance. And the Federation would stop at nothing to ensure that the truth stayed buried. The mission was a blur of chaos and gunfire. They had landed just outside the heavily fortified vault, a stark contrast to the fragile city around them. The silence was thick, the air oppressive as they advanced through the dim corridors, knowing that Federation forces were closing in. A few hundred meters into the vault's secure perimeter, they encountered their first line of resistance. The Federation had dispatched a covert squad to ensure the intel stayed buried. Zara moved swiftly, neutralizing the guards with practiced ease. Theo's rifle was silent, but lethal, picking off sentries as they moved deeper into the facility. Keep moving, Elara barked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her veins. We don't have much time. They reached the central chamber, and Theo quickly set to work on the vault door, his fingers flying over the control panel. It was a delicate task. If they triggered the alarm, the Federation would be on them in minutes. Got it, Theo muttered as the door clicked open. We're in. Inside the vault, the data was secured in a small, unmarked case, encased in a high-tech security matrix. Elara's heart skipped a beat as she realized how close they were to success. They were so close to exposing the truth. But the feeling was fleeting. Incoming! Finn's voice crackled over the comms. Federation reinforcements just dropped out of hyperspace. You've got about 5 minutes before they're on top of you. Elara's mind raced. Theo, now! The door slid open, revealing the hard evidence that could bring down the Federation. But as she reached for it, a blinding flash of light exploded from the corridor, and everything went dark. The explosion had come without warning, a blinding flash of light followed by a deafening roar. Alara's world flipped upside down as the shockwave sent her crashing to the ground. The vault door groaned, its metal frame warping under the force, and for a moment, everything was black. A sharp pain shot through Alara's head, and she groggily pulled herself to her knees. Her ears rang, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the air. She blinked hard, trying to clear the fog from her vision. The dim light of the vault flickered back on, revealing the damage. The walls were scorched, the ceiling scarred with jagged cracks, and in the middle of it all, the small case containing the vital data was gone. "Captain?" Finn's voice crackled through her earpiece. "What the hell happened?" Alara's fingers brushed against her neck, where the communicator still hung, and she forced herself to focus. The rest of her team was still alive. She could hear their groans of pain and the sound of feet shifting on the floor. "We're alive," she muttered, pushing herself to her feet. Her limbs felt like they were made of lead, but the urgency of the situation kept her moving. "Status report. Where's the intel?" Theo Harris groaned nearby, his head resting against the rubble. "It's gone, Captain. We were too slow. The case was taken before we could get to it." Alara's stomach clenched. They had been so close. All the evidence they needed to expose the Federation's covert operations, and now it was in the hands of the enemy. She turned to Zara Lee, who was checking her weapon, her eyes hard with determination. "Zara, get to the control panel," Alara commanded. "We need to lock this place down. They'll be on us soon." Zara nodded without hesitation. She darted over to the panel, her fingers moving quickly over the keypad. "Security lockdown in place, Captain. The vault's sealed tight. We'll be trapped in here if we don't move quickly." Alara cursed under her breath. They were running out of options. The vault's secure systems would prevent the Federation from retrieving the data, but it would also keep them trapped. If they couldn't retrieve the data, at least they could deny it to their enemies. That had to count for something. "Finn, how long do we have until the Federation arrives?" "Not long," Finn replied, his voice grim. "I'm tracking multiple Federation dropships inbound. You've got 5 minutes before they breach." Alara's mind raced. She had no choice but to leave the vault and find another way to get the evidence. The Resolute couldn't stay in orbit forever. The Federation was already closing in, and the longer they stayed on the ground, the less likely they were to make it out alive. "All right," Alara said, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her insides. "We move. Now." They moved swiftly through the ruined corridors of the underground facility, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The Iraqi vault had once been a symbol of their people's strength, a hidden treasure trove of their most sensitive data. Now it was nothing more than a tomb, its contents snatched away by the very people who were supposed to be their allies. Alara glanced over at Theo, who was scanning the hallways with his weapon raised. His sharp eyes were already calculating the next move, instinctively falling into the role of protector. Beside him, Zara's pace never faltered. She was their anchor, keeping them grounded in the chaos. "The Federation will come for us, Captain," Zara said quietly, her voice cold. "They'll burn this entire place down to cover their tracks. We can't let them," Alara replied, her eyes narrowing. "We can't afford to lose the evidence. We'll fight our way out if we have to. But we're getting it back." Ahead, Finn's voice came through the comms. "Captain, I've located a secondary exit on your left. It's a maintenance shaft that leads to the surface. It's the only clear route to the shuttle bay. You need to move now." Alara nodded, signaling the team to follow. They sprinted toward the exit, their every footstep a ticking clock. The Federation was coming for them, and she could feel the heat of their pursuit. The maintenance shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for them to move in single file. The air inside was thick with the smell of oil and dust, but it was their only escape route. As they made their way through the dimly lit passage, the faint sound of distant footsteps reached Alara's ears. They were being hunted. "Keep your weapons ready," she said, her voice a low growl. "If we encounter Federation troops, we fight through them." They rounded a corner and came face to face with a group of Federation soldiers. They were clad in black combat gear, their faces obscured by helmets. They hadn't noticed Alara's team yet, but it was only a matter of time. Without hesitation, Alara signaled for them to spread out. The moment the soldiers turned, Theo fired. His rifle rang out with deadly precision, knocking down the nearest enemy with a single shot. Zara followed, her gun a blur as she took down another. Alara's pulse quickened, and she moved, too, darting forward to cover their escape. The fight was brief but intense, a testament to how quickly everything could change when the Federation's full might was focused on you. When the last soldier fell, Alara's breath came in ragged gasps, but they didn't pause to catch their breath. "Move, move!" she ordered. They continued forward, pushing through the shaft until they finally emerged into the light of the surface. The shuttle bay was in sight, a cluster of Federation dropships already descending, their engines screaming in the atmosphere. The team broke into a sprint, racing toward their only chance at escape. "Almost there!" Finn shouted over the comms. His shuttle bay doors were ahead, but the Federation was closing in faster than Alara had hoped. They barely reached the bay when the first dropship landed, its rear hatch opening to release a wave of Federation troops. The sound of boots hitting the ground was like a death knell. "We're not going to make it," Theo muttered, eyes scanning the bay. "They've already got us surrounded." Alara didn't respond. There was no time for doubt. They had come this far, and they weren't going to stop now. "Zara," she said, her voice low but commanding, "give us cover. Theo, take the lead. We'll fight through them." They moved as one, a single, cohesive unit. Zara laid down suppressing fire, her gun a steady rhythm that kept the enemy's heads down. Theo charged forward, cutting through the Federation forces with brutal efficiency. Alara's heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline surging as she fired alongside them. Each shot was a calculated move, each step bringing them closer to the shuttle. "Captain, incoming!" Finn's voice rang out through the comms. "Another dropship just landed behind you." Alara turned, her eyes locking on to the new threat. The Federation was throwing everything they had at them now, but they couldn't stop. Not when they were this close. "Get to the shuttle!" Alara shouted. "We fight our way through this or we die trying." They reached the shuttle just as the last of the Federation troops closed in. Theo and Zara provided cover fire as Alara climbed into the pilot's seat. Her fingers flew over the controls, her mind laser-focused on the task at hand. "Everyone in!" she ordered. Finn, Theo, and Zara piled into the shuttle, and Alara slammed her hand on the thrusters. The shuttle shot forward, rocketing into the sky. Behind them, the Federation troops watched as they ascended, powerless to stop them now. But Alara knew this wasn't over. The Federation would be on them again, and soon. The data, the proof of their corruption, was still out there, in the hands of whoever had taken it. And with the Federation closing in, time was quickly running out. "We're not done yet," Alara muttered to herself. "Not by a long shot." As the shuttle sped through the atmosphere and toward the safety of the Resolute, Alara sat in silence, her mind racing. The team was alive, but the fight was far from over. She had the proof she needed, but now the real battle had just begun, exposing the truth to the galaxy, to the people who needed to hear it. But as she looked out the viewport, the vastness of space stretched before her, and Alara couldn't help but wonder just how far the Federation's reach really went. She had learned the hard way that no one, was as innocent as they seemed. And no matter how far they ran, the Federation would never stop hunting them until the truth was silenced forever. The real war was just beginning. The hum of the Resolute's engines filled the bridge as Alara sat in her captain's chair, her gaze fixed on the vast expanse of space before her. The stars stretched endlessly, but in the depth of her mind, the silence was suffocating. They had made it out of the Federation's clutches, barely, but the hard part was just beginning. The truth was out there, but the path to revealing it was as treacherous as ever. "Captain, we've entered hyperspace." Finn's voice broke through her thoughts. "We're on our way to rendezvous with the Iraqi fleet. Should we prepare for any Federation counteraction?" Alara turned toward him, her eyes sharp. We can't be sure they'll let us leave that easily. But right now, the best thing we can do is stay ahead of them. Keep an eye on any Federation ships. I want to know the moment they get close. Aye, Captain, Finn responded, his fingers already dancing over the console, inputting commands and scanning the surrounding space. Alara felt the familiar tension in her shoulders, a weight she hadn't been able to shake since the moment the vault had been compromised. The data they had fought so hard to retrieve was still locked away, stored in a secure case aboard the Resolute's hidden vault. But they couldn't get too comfortable. The Federation wouldn't stop until they destroyed it, and the Zorons, her supposed allies, were still a mystery. She couldn't trust them fully, not after everything that had happened. Captain, Zara's voice cut in, pulling Alara from her thoughts. There's something else. I've been analyzing the data we retrieved from the vault. It's more than just Federation involvement. There's a direct link to the Zoran government. They've been funding the war for years, manipulating both sides for their own gain. Alara's heart skipped a beat. She had known something was off with the Zorons, but this? It was a betrayal of a different order. The Zorons weren't just pawns, they were co-conspirators. Are you sure? Alara asked, her voice low and cold. Zara nodded, her expression unreadable. Absolutely. I've cross-referenced the files with known financial records. The Federation may be the face of the operation, but the Zorons have been supplying the weapons, the resources, and the propaganda to keep the war going. And they've been doing it for decades. Alara clenched her jaw, the implications of Zara's words weighing heavily on her. The Zorons had been the supposed victims in this war, the ones the Federation had been using as a pawn. But if they were complicit in the manipulation, it meant everything they had fought for, everything they had believed in, was a lie. The galaxy was built on falsehoods, and the truth was even darker than they had imagined. Prepare a secure transmission, Alara said, her voice firmer than it had been in days. I need to speak with the Iraqi leaders. We have to move quickly, or we'll lose everything. The transmission was brief but essential. Derek, the Iraqi leader, appeared on the screen, his features tense and drawn as always. Alara could sense his unease even through the cold, digital connection. The truth she held in her hands was just as dangerous for him as it was for her. You have the proof, then, Derek said, his voice heavy with a mixture of resignation and fear. The Federation's complicity, the Zoran betrayal, it's all there? It's all there, Alara confirmed. But we need to act fast. The Federation is already closing in on us. We don't have the luxury of time. I know, Derek replied, his gaze hardening. Our people are scattered, Captain. The Federation's ships are hunting us like prey. If the truth gets out, the Federation will destroy us all. Alara clenched her fists at her sides. We can't let them destroy you. We have to fight back. But we need your help, Derek. You're the one who can expose this to the galaxy. You have the power to make the Federation bleed. The Iraqi leader's eyes flickered with something that might have been hope. You have my word. But we need more than just information. We need ships, weapons, a force capable of standing against the Federation. Alara nodded grimly. We've been working on that. The Resolute is a good start, but we need to gather more. We'll hit the Federation where it hurts. This isn't just a war for survival anymore. It's a war for the truth. Derek's image flickered for a moment, the connection momentarily interrupted by static. When the screen cleared, he was gone. The transmission had ended. Captain, we've got a problem, Finn called from his station. Federation warships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're directly in our path. Alara felt a cold surge of adrenaline shoot through her. How many? At least 6 heavy-class ships, Finn replied, his voice tight with worry. They've locked onto our position. If we don't do something soon, we'll be sitting ducks. Alara was already on her feet, her mind racing through their options. The Resolute was fast, but a direct confrontation with a superior force like that was a death sentence. Zara, prep the weapons. We're going to need every advantage we can get, Alara said. Zara was already moving. Weapons online. We're ready. Get us out of here, Finn. But keep us on the move. I don't want to be in a static position for even a second. Aye, Captain, Finn replied, his fingers working furiously over the controls. Brace for evasive maneuvers. Alara watched as the stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks of light. The Resolute twisted and dodged, its engines roaring as Finn expertly navigated them through the ever-tightening grip of the Federation warships. We're not getting away, Zara muttered, eyes scanning the displays. They're not letting us go this time. Keep them off our tail, Zara, Alara snapped. We need more time. The battle that ensued was a blur of flashing lights and blaring alarms. The Federation ships were relentless, their weapons firing with terrifying precision. The Resolute was taking heavy fire, the shields flickering under the barrage of laser blasts. Every strike sent tremors through the ship, but Alara held firm. They couldn't afford to break now. They couldn't afford to lose. Shields holding at 60%, Zara reported, her hands steady on the weapon controls. We've taken out one of their frigates. But there are still 5 ships on us. Good, Alara said, her voice sharp. Keep pushing. We'll break through this. Finn was pulling the ship into a sharp roll, narrowly dodging a burst of enemy fire. They're closing in. We're too close to that destroyer. If we don't move now, they'll have us cornered. Get us out of here, Alara shouted. With one final, desperate maneuver, Finn sent the Resolute into a hard banking dive, narrowly avoiding another barrage. The Federation ships, momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected move, scrambled to reposition themselves. But it was enough. Alara could feel the brief surge of freedom as the Resolute shot through the gap, the enemy ships left in their wake. We're free, Finn breathed, his hands still tight on the controls. Alara exhaled, but she knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The Federation wasn't done. They would follow, and they would try again. But this time, they would be ready. Hours passed in silence as the crew worked to repair the damage. Alara's thoughts never strayed far from the task at hand. The Federation ships were still on their tail, but the Iraqi fleet was moving to intercept. It wasn't enough, though. They needed something bigger. Captain, Zara spoke up, her voice tight with resolve. I've been thinking about our next move. We need to give the Federation a reason to pull back. If we can hit them where it hurts, we might buy ourselves enough time to get to the Zoran High Command. Alara considered her words carefully. You're right. The Federation has too many resources at stake in this war. We need to target their supply lines, their key assets. If we can cripple their economy, we might be able to force them into negotiations. It won't be easy, Zara warned. But it's our best shot. Alara nodded. Prepare for a hit-and-run mission. We'll cripple their supply station in the Vadar system. It's risky, but it's our only shot at disrupting their operations. As the Resolute sped toward its next target, Alara felt the weight of the war pressing down on her. The Federation would stop at nothing to silence the truth. But they couldn't let that happen. Not now. She turned her gaze toward the stars once more. The Federation was powerful, but the truth was more powerful still. And with every passing second, Alara felt herself growing more certain. They would win this war, not by fighting for victory, but by fighting for something greater, the truth. Alara's knuckles were white as she gripped the edge of the command chair. The Resolute shuddered under the impact of the Federation's relentless barrage, its shields flickering dangerously. On the bridge, every member of the crew was on edge. The ship was outnumbered, outgunned, and yet it felt like they were teetering on the edge of victory, or oblivion. Shields at 35%, Captain! Finn's voice rang out over the comms, tinged with anxiety. We can't take much more of this. Alara's heart pounded, but her mind was calm. The Federation had underestimated them once, and they wouldn't make the same mistake again. It had taken everything to get to this point, to expose the conspiracy of the Zorons. Now they were on the cusp of exposing the truth to the galaxy, and that was worth any price. Zara, Alara ordered, her voice steady. Prepare the second wave. We're going in. Zara, already moving with practiced precision, nodded. Aye, Captain. Missiles are primed. You'll have them in 30 seconds. Alara watched as the Federation ships swarmed like vultures, their weapons flashing as they tried to bring the Resolute down. But the Resolute wasn't just any ship, it was the last hope, the vanguard of the truth. Alara wasn't about to let it fall. All hands brace for evasive maneuvers! Finn shouted as he pushed the controls to their limits. The ship groaned, protesting under the strain, but Alara held her ground. The Federation had underestimated human resolve before, and it was about to cost them. The Resolute banked sharply to the left, its engines roaring as it twisted and dove through the barrage. The Federation ships were hot on their tail, their pursuit relentless. Finn was maneuvering with all his skill, but they could only avoid so many shots before the ship started to take damage. We're taking fire from the port side! Theo yelled, his eyes scanning the displays for damage. Hull integrity at 55% and falling. Keep moving, Finn, Alara ordered. Zara, fire the secondary payload. Take down their heavy cruiser. Target locked, Zara replied, her fingers flying over the console. The ship's missile systems hummed as they powered up. Firing now, Zara said with a hint of satisfaction. The Resolute's missiles streaked across the darkness of space, homing in on the Federation's flagship cruiser. There was a brief moment of stillness before the explosion shook the ship, a bright flash lighting up the space between the Resolute and the Federation vessel. The cruiser erupted in a fiery explosion, and Alara could feel the shockwave reverberate through the ship. The Resolute swerved just in time, narrowly avoiding the debris from the destroyed cruiser. One down, Zara murmured, her expression grim. But we're not out of the woods yet. No, Alara agreed, her voice tight. But we've given them something to think about. Let's keep the pressure on. The Federation fleet regrouped quickly, their smaller ships now working in tandem to try and pin down the Resolute. It was only a matter of time before they started closing in again. We need to buy more time, Alara said, her mind racing. They couldn't keep dodging forever. There had to be another way, something to turn the tide in their favor. Finn's voice interrupted her thoughts. Captain, we've got incoming from the Iraqi fleet. They're moving to intercept the Federation ships. Looks like they've gotten our signal. Alara's heart skipped a beat. Derek had promised to deliver the support they needed, and now, finally, the Iraqi fleet was coming through. But would it be enough? The Iraqi fleet emerged from hyperspace in a coordinated strike, their ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel just as the Federation's attention was focused on the Resolute. The Federation fleet hesitated, momentarily thrown off balance as the Iraqi ships began to open fire, their advanced weapons systems lighting up the void. That's our opening, Alara said, a fire rekindling in her chest. Finn, we need to get to the transmission relay. Now. Finn nodded, his eyes bright with determination. Aye, Captain. Engaging full thrusters. We're going straight through their defensive line. The Resolute surged forward, cutting through the chaos of the battlefield. Federation ships exploded in the distance, the Iraqi fleet pressing their advantage. Alara felt the tide of the battle shift in their favor, but she knew it was far from over. The Federation would retaliate with everything they had left. Incoming fire, Captain! Zara called out. The Resolute jolted as another round of Federation laser blasts struck the ship, sending vibrations through the hull. Return fire, Alara ordered. We need to neutralize their long-range cannons if we're going to make it to that relay. With the Iraqi fleet distracting the Federation ships, Zara launched a barrage of missiles, targeting the Federation's long-range weapons and defensive stations. One by one, their turrets were silenced, allowing the Resolute to push forward without further resistance. We're in range of the transmission relay, Finn said, his voice tense. If we can broadcast the data from the vault, it's over for the Federation. Then do it, Alara said. Send the message. All of it. Let the galaxy see the truth. As the transmission began, Alara watched the Federation ships intensify their efforts. They knew what was coming. This was the endgame, and they were willing to fight until the last ship was down. but they had underestimated humanity's resolve. Alara wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, she was fighting for something greater, the truth. The transmission crackled through the comms, reaching the farthest corners of the galaxy. The documents, proof of the Zoran betrayal, the Federation's manipulation of the war, and the dark truth behind the galactic conflict, began to spread like wildfire. Alara's heart raced. They had done it. The truth was out. "We've done it," Zara whispered, her voice almost reverent as the data streamed out to every corner of the galaxy. "The Federation can't cover this up." Alara allowed herself a brief moment of relief, but she knew it wasn't over yet. The Federation would respond. They would try to wipe them out, silence them once and for all. But they had already taken the first step. They had shattered the Federation's lies. "Not yet," Alara said, her voice low and filled with determination. "We need to finish what we started." The Federation's remaining fleet moved to intercept, but the tide of battle had turned. With the Iraqi fleet now fully engaged, the Federation ships were outmatched. One by one, the remaining ships were disabled or destroyed. "Victory is ours," Theo said, his voice filled with awe as he looked at the devastation around them. But Alara knew the real battle was just beginning. The Federation would stop at nothing to reclaim control, but the truth was now in the open. The galaxy had seen their lies, and no amount of military might would ever erase that. "Prepare to rendezvous with the Iraqi fleet," Alara ordered. "We have work to do. The war is far from over, but this is the beginning of a new chapter." The Resolute had barely settled into a stable orbit before the war began in earnest. The Iraqi fleet, having dealt a significant blow to the Federation's military presence, still lingered near the remnants of the battlefield. The distant stars twinkled coldly as Alara paced the command deck, her mind still racing from the adrenaline of the fight. They had exposed the truth to the galaxy, proof of the Federation's corruption and the Zoran's betrayal, but the cost was becoming more apparent with each passing moment. "Alara!" A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Derek, his face grim as usual, but now there was something more to his expression, a weight, an unspoken fear. She turned, meeting his eyes. "What's the situation?" "We've received transmissions from several sectors," he said quietly, glancing down at his tablet. "The Federation is already rallying. They've begun a full-scale counteroffensive. The Iraqi fleet is under pressure, and our allies are scattered." Alara felt a coldness settle in her chest. She had known it wouldn't be easy. The Federation had the resources, the manpower, and the political clout to retaliate. But now, their victory felt like a fragile thing, a single blow that had shaken a behemoth but hadn't toppled it. "Not yet." "Do we have any allies left?" Alara asked, her voice quiet, though the weight of the question echoed through the room. "Scattered," Derek repeated. "Some planets have pledged support, but they're too small to make a meaningful impact. We need more ships, more forces. And we need them now." Alara nodded, clenching her fists. They had won the battle for truth, but the war? The war was just beginning. The gathering storm. Alara's team sat in the strategy room, their faces lit by the glow of the holographic map in front of them. Zara, Theo, Finn, and Derek were all there, each person carrying their own burden. But it was Alara's leadership that held them together. She could feel their doubts, could see the way their eyes flitted between the map and each other, as if waiting for the moment she would break. "I know it's difficult," Alara said, her voice calm but unwavering. "The Federation won't go down quietly. They will fight until every last one of us is silenced. But the truth is out. And that is a weapon more powerful than any fleet." Theo leaned forward, rubbing his temples as if fighting off a headache. "The truth won't save us if we don't have the firepower to back it up. We can't just be a voice in the dark. We need real action, strategic action." Zara, usually the one to leap into action without hesitation, spoke with a rare note of caution. "There's a fine line, Alara. We can't afford to waste time or resources on meaningless skirmishes. We need to target their supply lines, their command structures, disrupt their ability to fight back." Elara's eyes met each of their faces, understanding the concern but holding firm. She wasn't ready to admit it, not yet, but she knew they were all right. Victory in truth had come at a high cost, and now it was time to turn that truth into action, before the Federation managed to consolidate its power. "We're not just fighting a war anymore," Elara said, her voice steady and firm. "We're fighting for the future of the galaxy. Every decision we make counts. Every move must be calculated. We need to hit them where it hurts." The cost of victory. The Resolute sailed deeper into Federation territory, cloaked and invisible, as the crew began executing their strategy. Each mission was a calculated risk. The stakes were high. But with every Federation supply depot they took out, with every communications relay they disabled, the battle began to shift in their favor. However, Elara knew it wasn't enough. The Federation's leadership was still intact, and their forces were formidable. What they needed was a final, decisive blow. A strike at the heart of the Federation's military and political infrastructure. "We've located their primary command hub," Finn said, his voice low with concentration. "It's heavily fortified, but we can get there. If we take it out, we'll cripple their ability to coordinate forces. They'll be flying blind." Elara nodded, her expression resolute. "Prepare the team. We're going in. This is the final push." The operation was dangerous, too dangerous. But Elara wasn't the type to shy away from a challenge. She knew what was at stake, and this was their best shot. They had already torn the Federation's hold on the galaxy apart piece by piece, and now it was time to finish it. Betrayal in the dark. As the Resolute made its way toward the Federation command hub, the atmosphere on board grew heavy with the realization of what they were about to do. Elara felt the weight of her decisions pressing on her, but there was no turning back now. "Captain, we're approaching the perimeter," Zara reported, her voice sharp and focused. "Sensors are picking up multiple enemy ships, but we can get in undetected if we remain on course." "Keep it steady," Elara instructed. "We need to disable their defense systems first. Finn, get us through their blockade." The crew worked in silence, their actions synchronized as they moved closer to their target. Every moment felt like an eternity, as they carefully navigated through the defenses of the Federation's stronghold. But then, something unexpected happened. A signal flashed on Elara's console, an encrypted message from an unknown source. "It's from Zoran," Derek said, his voice tense. "I recognize the encryption." Elara's heart skipped a beat. Zoran, the one who had played both sides, whose betrayal had nearly torn the galaxy apart. She had trusted him once. "Open it," she commanded, her voice cold. The message flickered onto the screen. It was brief, almost too brief. "You've done well, Elara. But you'll never make it out alive. The Federation has already made their move. They know you're coming." The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Zoran hadn't just betrayed them, he had set them up. The Federation was ready for them. They had walked straight into a trap. "We've been compromised," Elara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Get us out of here, Finn. Full reverse. Now." But it was too late. Federation ships swarmed around the Resolute, closing in with terrifying speed. The trap had been sprung, and Elara and her crew were trapped in the heart of it. The last stand. The battle was chaos. The Resolute was caught in the Federation's vice, its shields weakening under the constant barrage of fire. Elara's team fought with everything they had, but their escape routes were quickly closing. It was clear now, there was no easy way out. "We can't hold them off much longer," Zara shouted as she fired another round of missiles at the Federation ships closing in. "They're overwhelming us." Theo gritted his teeth as he managed to stabilize the ship. "We're not dead yet. We can still fight. But we need a way out." Elara stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes scanning the battlefield. Her crew was fighting with everything they had. But there was a limit to what they could do. She had been in tight situations before, but this one felt different. The Federation wasn't just trying to destroy the Resolute. they were trying to destroy the truth it carried. Then, as the final Federation ship closed in, Alara realized what needed to be done. "Prepare the self-destruct," she said, her voice steady. "What?" Derek exclaimed, his face pale with shock. "Alara, you can't be serious!" "We've made our stand," she replied, turning to face him. "But we can't let them take this ship. We can't let them silence us. The truth has to survive." Zara and Theo exchanged a look, but there was no hesitation in their actions. They began the sequence. The Federation fleet had underestimated them, and now, Alara would turn their final act of defiance into their last victory. As the countdown began, Alara watched her crew work with precision, preparing for the inevitable. They had fought for the galaxy's freedom. Now, they would give everything for it. The Federation could destroy the Resolute, but they would never destroy the truth. "Goodbye, my friends," Alara whispered. And as the self-destruct sequence reached its final moments, the Resolute exploded in a brilliant flash of light, a final act of rebellion against the Federation. The galaxy would remember. The Federation would crumble. Epilogue. The truth of what had happened spread like wildfire. The Federation tried to cover it up, but the message had already been broadcast far and wide. Alara and her crew were gone, but their legacy lived on. The galaxy would never forget the price of freedom, the cost of truth. The Federation had been shattered, its lies exposed for all to see. And though the galaxy would never be the same, there was hope. And with hope came the promise of a new dawn.